Channing faces.
There we go.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Chairman. We're gonna have a wind-up. We're gonna start with me basically covering one small point, and then we're gonna turn it over back to our environmental consultant, our traffic consultant. Our environmental consultant, lastly, Lowe's. So I'll try to, one of the key areas was we'd like to note on page 6 of the staff report, if you go to the zoning code and land use, I will try to paraphrase without trying to reread the whole darn thing, but if you read the second paragraph, it very clearly indicates material sales, the IPD zone to include building material sales, retail and wholesale, including home improvement supplies, furthermore, implementation of present terms. So we can have, in the order about building material sales, wholesale, including home improvement, nursery items, lumber items, everything that Lowe's sells. Lowe's can address that a little bit more because it does sell, it has a robust lumber department, it has all the other items. It fits within the category, it just is skewed a little bit more towards retail compared to the other local competitor. But what I'd like to do right now is simply turn it over first, I think address the key issues, obviously, of the environmental questions and obviously traffic. And I think we'll endeavor to do that in general terms. If we miss any little item, we got a whole long list of them, we'll try to catch as much as we can. And we're happy to answer any questions and anything else that comes up. And thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I would like to briefly provide an overview of our responses to some of the comments that were entered in the public testimony tonight. The first point is there was a reference made to our Project T, was involved in the El Monte Home Depot EIR, and I polled my associates and none of us were involved in the preparation of that EIR, which was sued. The EIR was prepared on behalf of the City of El Monte. A number of other issues that were raised that were more specific, and these are actually easier for us to respond to because they cite very specific deficiencies. There was a criticism that we identified the project objectives, that we included city objectives. This is something that's not required under CEQA, but typically project objectives, and those are really required for an EIR. They're the basis for a statement of overriding considerations. As part of our documentation, they're optional, but we feel it is important that not only the applicant's objectives be cited, but as well as the city's. And obviously the city's objectives are to make sure this project is in conformance with the general plan, meets local regulations, and covers the public benefit overall. There was another comment that failed to consider growth-inducing impacts. Growth-inducing is a term that is typically used in environmental impact reports. Basically, we did cover that growth-inducing impact issue in certain settings. For example, traffic. We considered the project in its entirety. As you know, the development that's on the drawing board tonight is a Lowe's. We know that that project is certainly desirable. The office buildings are not identified, the tenant's not identified, but we were afraid or concerned that we would be in violation of CEQA if we only considered the one project component with full knowledge that other development would be contemplated in the near term on the property adjacent. There was another issue with cumulative impacts. We did consider cumulative impacts in those issues where it was relevant. Obviously, traffic is one of the key. We also identified the related projects. These are other projects. There was the project across the street that was cited. At the time we started this project, there had not been a formal application. And so we relied on projects that we had foreknowledge of, that there was a certain likelihood, and when this, again, project was initiated, the traffic studies were initiated some time back, we used the information we had at hand. There was a criticism that the mitigation monitoring reporting program was inadequate in that it didn't identify the responsible agencies, the timing, the enforcement. In fact, in that mitigation monitoring program, in the back half, we include a table that identifies just that, the enforcement body, even including a column for signatures. And I'll let, there's a reference that we should wait until a specific plan or some other more comprehensive planning initiative was undertaken or further along before we entertain the CEQA impacts of this project. What activated this CEQA review was the application, a private application. And unless there's a moratorium established, we can't just defer this to some future date. The application was provided. It's not a city-initiated project. Whether or not the city is in support of a particular project is not relevant. The cities are obligated to evaluate the impacts of a given application that has been deemed complete. Finally, I indicated very early on why we didn't do an EIR for this project, and I was very sincere in that. It would be to, we don't want to pad our company's coffers with EIRs that are much more expensive and much longer time frame to complete. As a practitioner for 35 years, I have watched this process become overly complicated and cumbersome. And my greatest fear is at some point the legislature is going to say enough. This is taking too long and it's too much money. And it's interesting that some of the very large projects that really did deserve CEQA review, with the signature of the governor, they were not, they did not proceed. So I really do take, and our project team takes a state mandate very seriously, that we need to make these projects easier to understand. We've established page limits, tried to make them as comprehensive to the general public as possible, to make the process easier. For that reason, we determined, and you can see the facts in the record, that an EIR was not warranted. We never said that there would not be environmental impacts. We never indicated that it would be business as usual. But we used the criterion that is very clear in common practice to ascertain whether there would be a significant adverse impact. And for that reason, the environmental team determined that this M&D initial study was the appropriate document. And I want to add that the technical studies in this document are the same detail, same level of information that you would see in an EIR. With that, I'd like to ask Serene, the traffic engineer, to respond to some of those traffic-related issues or comments.
So I think the biggest issue we want to explain is the use of trip generation rates that were not taken from the ITE trip generation manual. ITE is Institute of Transportation Engineers. They publish a trip generation manual that is comprised of driveway counts taken at different sites, different kinds of land uses, residential, commercial, office, home improvement store, and they produce a resource document, and it's now in its 9th edition. So it's been produced and submitted and published for decades. But it's a resource and it's a starting point. And the rates in the ITE document may not be completely representative of the project that you're producing and or analyzing. And I want to read a couple of things straight out of the ITE handbook. First of all, it says, in some cases, limited data were available. Again, ITE doesn't generate the data themselves. They only have available to them the data that is sent to them by firms like us who go out and do these driveway counts. and they may not have a lot of data or it may not be complete. Thus, the statistics presented in the document may not be truly representative of the trip generation characteristics of a particular land use. When practical, the user is encouraged to supplement the data in this document with local data that have been collected at similar sites. And so that's what we did, and we've done this many times. It's not unusual, and certainly not a deviation from the standard. We have done this for Target, Boeing, Starbucks, McDonald's, Monster, for a number of different reasons. In this case, the site that was selected was the site in Poway, as you heard. The reason that site was collected is most Lowe's are part of a larger center, a larger commercial center. So if we counted all the traffic at the driveway, we're counting traffic not just for Lowe's, but for all the other uses in that center. The Poway Lowe's does stand alone. It's on its own site. It has other uses around it. Got a Walmart across the street from it. It had other similarities to this site. It was within 20,000 square feet in size. Both have a garden center, both along a commercial corridor, and both have a Home Depot within a mile or so. That data was collected. It was adjusted because of the slight difference in the size of the store. Those trip rates, yes, they were less than the trip rates in the ITE manual for what was called a home improvement superstore. That was the data that was made available to the ITE trip generation. It were less in the morning peak hour and in the evening peak hour, and we estimated that at least some of the reason for that is because of the larger component of contractors coming to the site both to purchase their product for their day's work and also for day laborers. And I've seen other sites that do have a group of day laborers, and people will come to that site just to get somebody to work with them that day, even if they're not a customer of the store. And as you heard, that is not as great an issue at Lowe's. So that was why we did that. Again, it's not unusual to do it. In fact, ITE encourages you to do it. One of the other things I was going to say, Mark already said, but I'll just repeat. When we sit down to do a traffic study, we don't even always know, is this going to go MND or is it going to go EIR? What we do, what we study, how we study it, and the methodologies, the standards, they don't change. The traffic study would have been the same for either. I think those were the big issues, and I'll be available to answer questions.
Thank you. I'm just going to now introduce Pat Chin again. She'll start to address, there's a lot of questions about the environmental condition and what's happening really, for the site, and I'll let her address those technical issues that will address that. Thank you.
Good evening again. I just wanted to clarify, I think there were some comments made about how the site had not been investigated or the city may not fully understand or be aware of what the condition of the site is. And I just wanted to once again explain that the site actually underwent extensive investigation. And in fact, the city, along with myself and our consultant, as well as the Regional Water Quality Control Board, met several times just to keep the city abreast of the situation and answer any questions and concerns that the city might have with respect to the conditions at the site. And so, I just want to be clear that this was not a blind process. It was an iterative process, and we were engaged with both the city and again, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, who has been with us every step of the way. The second issue I want to clarify is on the Superfund site. I think there's been tremendous concern expressed about the fact that the site is on a Superfund site, and I just want to clarify that it's the Alhambra operable unit, and really it's a regional groundwater issue. There are lots of developments that occur on these types of sites. Certainly, the Regional Water Quality Control Board is very used to this. In fact, in talking about the deed restriction, they have other models because this happens fairly often. It's not strange. The groundwater is at roughly 100 feet below grade, so it's, it should not impact really the use of the site. And we also, as Derek Reed was talking about, we have, our mitigation measure is for a vapor barrier. And the real concern here is vapor intrusion. And that's the very reason why we have committed to putting in a vapor barrier. So this actually leads into the next point. Someone raised the issue of asthma and toxic vapors. And I just want to, again, clarify, we're dealing with VOCs here. And when they come up through the ground, they dissipate in the air. The real cause for concern is when they go into a building and they build up and you breathe it in. If it's outside, they just dissipate into the air. So as far as I know, I don't know of any toxic conditions on the site. So that really should not be an issue. Someone else asked for access to the environmental documents, and in the response to comments, we noted that we would have the city put a geo-tracker link on their website. Just for those folks who are interested, the website is www.geotracker.waterboards.ca.gov. If anyone wants to look it up now, and all you do is punch in the address, which is 1000 South Meridian, and the site will come up, and all the documents, all the technical documents are there for anyone to review. What we tried to do was pare it down in the MND, as Mark mentioned. We tried to summarize it, and I apologize for not defining gradient. Gradient is which way the water flows underground. And so we really tried to, make it more clear for the public to read and understand the conditions at the site. One last thing, we are doing a health risk assessment, and that would confirm the acceptable level of risk, and that's required as part of the soil closure. So once we have that in, that should give a final analysis of the minimal health risk at the site with the vapor barrier implemented. Thank you.
One more person to introduce, and another interesting point. The Cole Shopping Center is in the same condition as our site. So, it's not just our property, it involves the whole section. They're involved in the same section. People have been operating Coles for a number of years now. I'd like to have Mark Stoddard come up and make some final comments and questions that I've gotten to Lowe's. And we're here to answer any questions that your board wishes to ask us.
I thought I'd just clarify, from an operational standpoint, our categories are consistent with other home improvement operators and lumberyards, I suppose. I think our presentation is really significantly different, at least we like to think so. We like to think that our presentation is more retail oriented with just a little bit of a higher look, so to speak. But we have a lumberyard. It is an indoor lumberyard. We have a big garden center. We have a paint center. We have a hardware section. We have a tool section. So we have a lot of sections that are consistent with what you find in all of our competitors. I just think you'll find our presentation a little bit different. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I am going to close to the public. I'm open to commissioners. Any of the commissioners have anything that you have at this point? Gary?
I have a question about the vapor barrier. Is that just for the building or the entire site?
I can address that. Once the human health risk assessment is complete, it'll determine risks in various locations of the site. So if the risk is higher in one area, the threshold is 1 in a million. So if the risk is a 1 in a million increased cancer risk, That's usually at the time where the regulator will require some sort of mitigation. We don't know what the risks are at this point, and they're committed to installing the barrier under the main Lowe's building. But they haven't completed the work on the edges of the site, so we'll have to wait and see.
So I guess the answer would be, if necessary, it could be potentially the entire site.
Correct. So they're committed to providing whatever mitigation is necessary to keep the public safe, and it's all regulated through the county DA, the Department of Toxic Substance Control.
Just to clarify, it's just under the buildings.
Right now.
It would not, it would only be under the buildings.
That's why I'm asking the question. The first question is
So-
the building or the site?
Yeah, so the purpose of the barrier is to protect enclosed structures with people in it. So it's an indoor air vapor intrusion issue.
So you did not find any gas?
When you're
When you're
what do you
emitting
consider gas,
well,
are you talking gasoline or vapor?
paper.
So the site has undergone quite a bit of remediation already. It included excavation of shallow soils, and they also did deep and shallow soil vapor extraction. So the soil vapor extraction is you apply a high vacuum to the subsurface through extraction wells, and it extracts soil vapor or gas from the soil. It volatilizes it from the poor water and the contaminants that hold on to the soil particles.
So would there be a site monitoring program, wells, et cetera?
There may be, so the water board is continuing to provide oversight, and they're going to be continuing to do what's necessary to get soil closure and any additional work.
So that will become part of the final mitigation measures, or is there a monitoring program for the next 20, 30 years?
There is continuing groundwater monitoring that will be required. As far as the site itself, once we get soil closure, there should not be additional monitoring of the soil conditions per se. However, there are monitoring requirements that will probably be implemented to make sure the vapor barrier is doing what it's supposed to be doing.
So that will be
So-
part of the building plan? Or, right?
Yes,
So,
so it's different, it's not.
right, and
Yeah, okay.
I just want to make sure I get the right answer, because I've been involved in a lot of those, and I know that the monitoring is so important in terms of inside the building for most of the occupants. So I think that should be part of the condition if it's not already is.
Yes, and remember, the water board will have to approve the design.
Right.
And so along with that will be the monitoring conditions and whatever needs to be installed. There may be monitoring probes installed. So that will all be part of the design.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions at this time?
I have a couple.
Ms. Santos, you have?
I have a few of the same concerns that some of the residents of Alhambra have. I've lived here 50 years. I've lived here my whole life. I've seen the change in Alhambra. I've seen the growth, the development. I've seen everything change and the traffic increase. I mean, for me to get, I live near Cal State Lake, to get to Albertsons, which is half the site, takes me 40 minutes during traffic time. So I am one of the offenders that takes Marengo, takes Meridian. If I'm coming from my son's practice in South Pass, I'm that offender. I do it with caution though. I don't rip off mirrors or any of that, because at the end of my street is a freeway on-ramp, a secret on-ramp. So I'm very sympathetic to the traffic issues on my street in my backyard. I'm for the project. For those coming in, for the office buildings, I think it's great for the city. The major concerns that I have are the traffic and the traffic signals. It's more of the drivers that are blocking intersections and not respecting when it stops. So nobody can get through because whoever's turning north on Valley to Fremont is blocking. That's whether it's increased policing, better traffic signals, that to me is the major issue. It could take me 6 stoplights to get through Fremont and Valley. it's a problem. And I sat by Home Depot several different times through the day, and the cars are parked. I don't see an increase in traffic. I don't see that this is going to increase the traffic in that sense, that the business or the offices. The traffic I mainly see is that we have with outside residents outside the city that are using it as a main thoroughfare. So I am concerned with the schools. My son attends Fremont School, right off the freeway. And as he walks home, he's almost picking up cars as well. So there is that huge concern. I don't think that's something that the landowners, that's not your fault. It's the fault of consumers, the drivers. How the city can figure that and work that, I kind of put that on to Public Works and the city with your studies at hand. I mean, that to me is my biggest concern. And I think if the project is approved, I think taking into strong consideration the closure of Meridian. I don't know how a barrier turning one way or the other way, I think you're still going to have people from the outside come in. So if you block it, I've heard support for it and I've heard opposition for it. But I do appreciate the strong community listening to what the concerns of the community. Whether it's Lowe's in the office buildings or Walmart or someone else, the same problem is going to persist. There's a gentleman that mentioned he owns a property that's been in foreclosure. If anybody wants to raise money and buy that, turn that into a park, that'd be great. I think the cost of what the developers have paid for this land to put it for a park, I don't think it's realistic. We've had those other projects in the city as well. So that's my concern is the traffic. I don't know that putting another traffic light, that just means it's going to be one more stop for me to get to where I need to go. And the driveway. So I think that's just the big concern I have. I'm for the Lowe's, I'm for the office buildings. If there's a way for employment opportunity for Alhambra residents, having priority, considering they're competent to handle that position. As a resident of Alhambra and as a commissioner, those are the concerns and listening to what the community has said. That's all.
Well, I've been very interested in the comments of my neighbors in this town. My history with Emory Park goes way back. I was in the 4th grade when Emory Park School opened, and I was in the 1st class. I'm very concerned about Meridian because and I feel quite strongly that we should consider closing Meridian and separating the residential area and the traffic in the residential area from the traffic in the commercial area. This seems to be one of the easiest ways to protect the children as they go to the park, which I was on the council at the time we found a way to make that a park, and to protect the students in the school and the residents in the area from the parking of who knows who. So I think that would be a very important thing. I can remember when we were clearing the land and talking about putting in a Price Club, which is now Costco, and there was great concern from many people in that area that this was just going to be impossible. And yet we have adjusted to it, and I think that if we put some really good traffic engineers to putting up coordinated signals so that when you go through one signal, you get a chance to go through the next one, and you don't, and if they're properly coordinated, and if you've got left turn signals and right turn signals, so you can make the traffic move thoughtfully through the intersections. On the our major intersections where I see those, there's a lot of traffic can move through an intersection and people can keep going. And I did watch Main Street where if you start with a group at Atlantic, you can keep going all the way through town to get traffic sometimes when the traffic is moving. And I think that there's some challenges there that we can do that will help the traffic flow. I know that Lowe's traffic seems to all go on to Fremont, but the office building traffic and the large office building, that goes on the Meridian. And if we close Meridian, it'll all go down. And the people coming to work will come up the street. And so this will keep our residential area immune to the forces that inevitably come when you have a large commercial development such as this shopping center and office buildings, etc. will be. But otherwise, I feel that we will be very happy to have the sales tax, because I don't know if you people know that it's the sales tax that keeps us with our first level quality fire department and our paramedics and our police department, with the many things that they're able to do for the community. If we can have more sales tax, we can have more policemen around to take care of us, and we'll be able to do many things that will make the city more enjoyable for the residents. And so I think I feel good about this project because I feel that we have a staff that will see that all of these people are making sure we mitigate, really it mitigates. And we will find that when this is built, that we will, and we get over the noise and the activity that comes with building a big building and the noise that comes with that, and we get all settled down, we're going to find that this will be something that will enhance the community, and that we will find the benefit will allay our trepidation and fears of right now. Thank you.
I have one question for staff. Is that on the docket to close Meridian? Was the developer considered in that?
They said they would be willing.
Would they be willing to?
Wasn't it part of the proposal?
Does it have to be a condition that this was upon approval?
Yeah, the developer has, we've discussed this draft condition and this possible exploration of
It still
closing
has
it.
to be available for the fire and the police to mitigate through. Yeah.
Yes, it would need fire emergency access.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Mm,
Okay. But they're willing to participate in that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that would be a condition we'd have to put in.
So that's what I would like to put in. I'll be glad to make the motion this time.
For clarification, it would be a condition of approval, and the developer has agreed to it. We do have some draft language that we could read into the record. Just want to clarify that it is not a required mitigation, and it's not required as a part of making the project work. It's considered a betterment and something that the developer has agreed to as a result of the community's input at the community meeting, and comments we've heard in writing and seen in print. So it's a response to input, and then as requested by the commissioner as well.
Well, the thing I'm thinking is that the fire department can look at it and see if it's necessary that it be open, because I would like very much to encourage the traffic that comes to and from work, that it not turn Meridian into an Atlantic Boulevard, and which it could carry the traffic and keep that residential area safer for the children going to and from school and various things that happen in the neighborhood.
Yes, and if I could add somewhat to what staff has already indicated and the developer, the intent of the condition would allow for exploration of the closure of the street or traffic calming measures, but that needs to be looked at as its own sort of process, because obviously we want to make sure fire can get through that. And so one of the things we talked about is you can do these bollards that you put in there, and they have a lock that they can then do. So, I mean, that would be something that we could look at. Again, this is something the developer agreed to. It's not really, I mean, it's going to be a condition, but it's not something that the project requires. But it is something that they are willing to do in response to comments received at the committee meeting, and especially over this weekend.
So I have no further questions.
I have a question. A staff question regarding the delivery truck concern with Soto Foods 24 hours. Is there, I know that there is something in one of these reports on the times and stuff. So whether helping the neighborhood feel a little better about the policing of the times or something on that, just to make sure that mind checking on Soto Foods, whether code enforcement or somebody can check on that. And then, go ahead.
Staff can definitely look into their conditions, if any. It's an older use. We can definitely look into how they were approved and certainly, where possible, talk about complaints. It should be noted that that is entirely separate, their operation entirely separate from this proposal, but we can definitely look into their operation.
And then I have a question of clarification just for Ms. Chen. It's just more of a yes or no. You had mentioned that there's a cleanup on the site since 2010. So there's like 7 years of cleanup and decontamination. And I guess the contamination was like 55 to 75 feet.
There's actually, most of the contamination was in the shallow soil, which was excavated. The deeper contamination, I was just mentioning that there is some remaining contamination in the deeper zone within, in the 55 to 70 foot zone. And that's part of the reason for putting in the vapor barrier, just in case that contamination might migrate up. So does that clarify?
Yeah, well, you just mentioned that it was, that it's, is it right, unable to seep out because of the density, or?
Yes,
So
so the soil.
It's not like it's going anywhere, just to put peace of mind to everybody.
Right, so it goes both ways, right? It's hard to treat, but it also means it's not moving a whole lot. So yes, it's kind of both, and we've been dealing with it. It's a bit of a challenge, and so that's what we've been talking to the Regional Water Quality Control Board about, is what do we do about this? And we certainly have looked into various ways of dealing with it, and that was the feasibility study that I mentioned.
Okay, I just want to make clarification when there was water runoff, it wasn't that it was contaminated water.
No, nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Councilor Gowan?
I'm not sure if this even exists, but is there such thing as a health risk assessment as a result of the traffic on human beings?
Accident. That's their fault. You should have an accident.
We have prepared or oversaw the preparation of health risk assessments for large, very large industrial projects where there were a lot of trucks, larger diesel trucks. It's been a while since we've had to do that. For one thing, the trucks are getting a lot cleaner. And there's not too many very, very large sites left. I mean, we are talking developments where there's in excess of 1 million square feet of floor area. So it's really related to diesel emissions.
So what I'm talking about is specifically the kind of traffic you see on Fremont on a daily basis, how that would impact. I mean, the question of asthma was brought up. I don't know if that was ever.
Well, you know, the asthma related to traffic is certainly, freeways, major streets, there's a lot of traffic. But that's really independent of what this project's involved. I'm not trying to kick the football down the field. I mean, again, SEEK was very specific in how we have to deal with existing conditions. And if we thought that this project would contribute to that kind of a condition, certainly we would strive to mitigate that impact. But one thing that, the previous use, when you look at that picture of 400,000 square feet of heavy industrial, where were the emissions going? The grinding, the chromium ore, all the other materials. That project were to come in tomorrow, you might want to do a health risk assessment. That would be related to the stationary equipment, not necessarily to the vehicles.
So I just wanted to say, I'm very conflicted. My office is across the street from the project in the Alhambra, and we have co-workers who've been walking across the street to go to Starbucks and have been hit. Getting to work is always a challenge, and so now our little back secret ways are going to be flagged up. So I just wish that we could think of a way to resolve the traffic situation before we got in any deeper. And I know that sometimes that's not really possible. Also, I do want to say that I think Alhambra being a business leader is a good thing. If we want to see what it looks like to have no city revenues, we just need to go to any other sort of rural area or third world country or something. You'll see what it looks like when you don't have income coming in to support social programs. As for parks, I love our parks, but so do the other cities. Rather than building their parks, they come to our parks. So I do want us to have, I think Alhambra is already great. I don't think we have to make it great again. I think it's a good city to live in. I've lived here 35 years. But I am concerned about projects that maybe we really have to look at. Is there some other way to approach this that takes into consideration health and our quality of life? So like I said, I'm very conflicted about this. I do want to ask a question of Lowe's. Our agency provides services for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. How many people does your store hire that have developmental or intellectual disabilities?
I do know that we do hire employees with disabilities. I don't know the amount, but I can find out.
But I'm talking about very specifically developmental disabilities, not somebody in a wheelchair.
I don't know the specifics of that, but I'll find out.
That's all.
How many cars will there be on Fremont now?
I think we have been here all night. Right. And we have heard a lot of issues. I have been in the city of Alhambra for over 30 years. And I think considering all the facts and issues, one of the main overriding consideration, at least for me, is that site that is going to be cleaned up. That I think speaks volume. So, and I'm not disagreeing or putting any of the issues that has been raised today as a non-issue, but I think that site for the overall future health of our community, I think, is an overriding factor for me. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion which it would include accepting the proposals by the developer to somehow put a closure to Meridian Street for the through traffic between north and south. Is that? Is it? I would approve this one.
I'll second the motion.
And if I may, Chair, since we now have a first and a second before we call a vote, just so everyone understands what, what the motion is and what those items are that you would like to have added, I think it might be useful to mention those. And just, it's two short little housekeeping notations on the conditions that staff is also requesting on this PL, on PL 8, 9, and 10 on page 36 of your packet, Exhibit A, where it indicates that all off-site improvements shall be completed prior to the issuance, and it now says final building permits. We want to change that as a typo. It needs to be issuance to the occupancy permit, and so that also be changed in PL 9 and PL 10. And then in addition, and then one other note on the resolution itself, there was another typo where it indicated there were 4 buildings. It's actually just 2 buildings. So that appears on page 27 of your packet, section 3A. So the proposed project consists of a home improvement center and 2 office buildings. As we've said several times, again, it's just a typo. And now to move on to the 2 conditions, would appear that they would come as PL 56 and PL 57. So again, this is what we worked on today with the developer, and the developer is going to do this. It would state that the developer will work with the city to explore the closure or other traffic calming measures on Meridian Boulevard, located near Mimosa. This process will follow all legal requirements, and the decision to close the street will be made in the city council's sole and absolute discretion. Developer shall pay for and shall post the bond to ensure completion of the work in an amount not to exceed $300,000 to cover the cost of staff time to process this item for city council consideration, and any noticed public hearing required, as well as for associated costs for engineering and construction of any improvements needed to complete the closure or other traffic calming measures. If the city council considers the closure item within 12 months of the developer receiving all city approvals, the condition will be deemed satisfied. If the city council does not approve the closure, or if other traffic calming measures are not recommended and there are amounts remaining on deposit, the developer will be refunded all remaining amounts. And I've indicated it's Meridian Avenue. I've said Boulevard, and I've said street, so it's Meridian Avenue. The next condition is if the city approves the Meridian Street closure or other traffic calming measures, the developer shall undertake actions to acquire the property located in the Foundry address. Do we know the Foundry? It's the property, the Foundry property at Meridian Avenue. We can clarify that whenever we draft that. To be dedicated to the city, to be developed as a park in connection with the closed portion or traffic improved portion of Meridian Boulevard. The developer shall pay for and shall post a bond to ensure completion of the work in an amount not to exceed $250,000 to cover the cost of the purchase of the property, as well as any related engineering and construction costs for the park. If after all due diligence and reasonable efforts undertaken by the developer, as determined by the city in its sole and reasonable discretion, the property cannot be acquired within 12 months of the City Council's approval of the Meridian Street closure or other traffic calming measures, the developer shall be refunded remaining amounts on deposit, and this condition will be deemed satisfied. Notwithstanding the prior sentence, if the city determines that the developer has not undertaken all due diligence and reasonable efforts to acquire the property, the bond may be used by the city for it to undertake the acquisition of the property. If after 12 months from the time the city is undertaking steps to acquire the site, it is unable to acquire the site, the developer shall be refunded the remaining amounts on deposit, and this condition will be deemed satisfied. So again, that was worked on with the developer and staff today.
If they're not able to get the property, does that relieve them of not closing the street, or do you just close it?
That's why we had to draft it as two separate measures. The having that additional property can make the closure exactly, and so that's what we would like to have that for that.
Have that to include to make the closure better, but if the property becomes unavailable for some reason, the traffic would be adjusted according to.
Well, again, before we can get to acquiring any property, either the city council is going to go through its process and decide if they want to close the street, or if other traffic calming measures would be required. So that would happen first, and then if,
So the closure is not dependent, closures depend on the city council.
Correct.
Not on the property.
correct,
Okay,
right,
that sounds fine.
right. Right, the city councils, yeah. And just for the record, it's property APN number 52912621. So those would be added into the resolution if it is approved. Okay, I just thought it'd be important to kind of detail it before you,
So we have a first and a second, so now we need to have roll call.
How many cars will be added on Fremont?
We don't know.
I am calling for roll call.
Bunker, Uncle Soto,
Wait a minute, hold on. What do we call it? The full context. The full, you want to hear the whole thing all over again? Okay, read it one more time before we call for roll call.
What I did was I made a motion and I think council correctly put in the right language for the conditions. And my motion is to approve the project with the condition that we would accept the developer's proposal to close off Meridian Avenue to the north and south part of the street to address the traffic issues.
To separate the residential from the.
Are we good with that?
With all of the.
and I just want to make it clear, you are paraphrasing it, but the details are kind of important.
Correct,
So that's
correct.
why, again, that process
Do
is
you want to
something
hear
we
me
call.
again before we?
That's okay.
That's contingent on city.
City council's approval.
Contingent on city council.
So that if they don't approve it,
Well, then,
then we go back to the original, and that goes without further discussion.
Yes, it goes without further discussion here.
Right, so just to reiterate, as far as the closure, if that was to happen, this Streets and Highway Code requires that there is a notice public hearing and a determination is made by the city council, and that's the law, and that's in sole discretion.
Everybody good? Can I call for roll call? Roll call, please.
Bunker,
yes,
Uncle Soto,
Yes.
Genhart,
Yes.
Osakawa,
No.
Wang,
Yes.
Mazza,
No.
Maloney.
Yes.